This is a response to Light Matter 5252's video, Who Made God? It's linked below and I will address him directly from this point forward. You open by acknowledging the infinite regress atheists often rightfully point out when someone argues that God must have caused the universe because nothing in our universe happens without a cause, and therefore something outside of our universe must account for the first cause that created it. Therefore, that something must be God. I don't entirely accept the language of the premise to begin with. I haven't witnessed a causeless event, but one occurring does still seem more plausible to me than a God existing. I also have a big problem with you claiming that you know what exists or happens outside of our time and universe. We haven't even put a man on Mars yet, but people are willing to claim they know what happened outside of time and this universe. Until you can prove that you have a reliable source for such information, your assertions remain only that, assertions. Before you reach for your Bible as your source to prove that divine knowledge, remember that it was written by mortal men whose scientific knowledge could be dwarfed by a modern middle school student. Until you can prove that they had certain knowledge of the events beyond our time and universe, that book means nothing more to me in this argument than the latest installment of Twilight. Moving on. Your first point, if you will, is that we don't realize that time really began with the Big Bang, and everything that happened before that doesn't count as having happened during the existence of time. And therefore, oh wait, I don't buy that premise either. Known time, or more accurately, time during which events occurred that we can reasonably speculate began with the Big Bang. It's currently impossible for us to know what happened before that. But that doesn't mean that the Big Bang was necessarily the starting point of all time. This would be like Mario arguing to Luigi that the moment the Nintendo was turned on had to be the start of time, because they have no knowledge of what happened before that. For all we know, there could be any infinite number of universes which existed before ours, expanded, collapsed, and birthed new universes. We don't know, and so it's not fair to say that we have any certainty on the matter, let alone build arguments on such speculations. For you to claim that anything existed prior to time is nonsensical to me, because existence is an action, and all actions require the passage of time. Just the decision to start time would require time to conceptualize and enact. Your next claim, with again a flawed premise, is that God must exist outside of space and time, and your proof for that is, well, how could God's existence be space and time based if he created space and time? Your poor excuse for evidence, which, remember, is supposed to be proving God exists, requires me to not only accept that he exists, but accept that he created space and time, and then accept that as evidence for him existing outside of space and time. That's just as illogical as claiming that my invisible, intangible pet dragon must exist and created himself, because, well, how could he have created himself if he didn't exist? My answer to you is simple. He didn't have a beginning, nor did he create time, because I have no reason to believe he exists. Weren't you supposed to be giving me a reason to believe that? Then, you have the nerve to say that the question of God's beginning is a paradox because he just doesn't have one. When you finally come back to dealing with the question that your video was supposed to answer, which is, how does God exist outside of space and time, or without a beginning, or how did he come to be, you retreat to, I don't know. This suggests to me that you think you do know everything else that you claimed about occurrences beyond observable existence. Wouldn't it be far more honest to just admit that you don't know how God can be the only exception to the first cause rule, and therefore it's a pointless argument for believers to make? You say that you take comfort in these questions being unanswerable. My advice is that if you hold a belief close to your heart and someone points out why your belief is flawed or illogical or contrary to reality due to several issues, and you can't find answers to those issues that they present, the appropriate response is not to take comfort in your lack of answers. Lastly, you consider the mystery of God's existence proof of him not being an invention of man. That because if man invented this God, then we would have the answers. Does that mean that Spider-Man must be real because we can't prove how a radioactive spider bite can grant superpowers? He must therefore be divine and exist outside of actual science. I can answer the burning question for you rather simply, Light Matter. From what I can tell, you're right about one thing. Your God does exist outside of space and time, which means he exists nowhere and never.